So the movement is, it's a pattern. The pattern was established by the grocery industry. And the people who went through that, not only just the ones that made the equipment and the systems, but that established the policies, established the organizations, okay, that could manage the UPC, manage each manufacturer. Okay, what code numbers are you going to get? What can you use? Maintenance. This led in the quick response movement in general merchandise to the realization that there needed to be a database someplace for manufacturers to drop in their new product lines and their UPCs, and that the retailer could then extract out of that to feed his point of sale system. That idea was brought up by Carter Hawley Hale, again, reference to the Midwest or West Coast department store chain. Vince came up with the concept that we needed that form of a database, a services organization. It was determined that, after talking to a lot of retailers, that they didn't want another retailer controlling that. So it had to be a unrelated, somebody out of the business. And so the PRJ, Peter Johnson Software Company, which was very active in retailing, they set up a subsidiary called QRS Inc., which became the catalog, for which the manufacturers could input their UPCs, the retailers could extract from it. I don't know how far that went, but there were, in the initial design, I know that you could actually put in design information. You could, graphics in terms of what the product looked like, so you really make a catalog out of it. Don't know how far that ultimately went, only because I've been out of it for that end of it. And I set up an organization within my shop called Quick Response, and had Jim Lovejoy as a director to run it, and a group to work with the various committees and to stay abreast of, or stay ahead of, preferably, what needed to be done and to help in all possible ways. It had been a major marketplace for us for years, going back to the Macy's and the Grants and the so forth. So where we were, the IBM was limited to what we could do from an application standpoint, to what input could be given to the system, and you couldn't pull detailed point of sale information into it because of the various coding symbologies that were out there. We benefited, therefore, by having a standardized scanning capability, and so yes, IBM benefited, and so we were able to focus more on front end on the scan. We had been in the market. We had been selling point of sale systems to the retail industry, to the general merchandise industry, but we let's put it this way: application penetration from anybody, any vendor, into the general merchandise was limited to what you could deal with other than point of sale data. Once you could tap the point of sale data, that opens up all kinds of, you get into the analytics as an example. You could really get into logistic systems in terms of their warehouses and their transportation. But now there's associated things with that. There's a whole set of applications and equipment with handheld. Okay, things that Telzon, as an example, who we became very friendly with, but they were serving a different need. So there were a lot of important players out there, but we were delighted to be able to have a better run at the point of sale systems than we had, and it kind of has worked out that way. In the merchandise area, I've got to acknowledge that with the huge growth of the mass marketers, that became paramount. The department stores and the specialty chains we had focused on heavily. Companies like Limited and its Gap, department stores were tougher to deal with because you had all the fashion aspects in there and hundreds of thousands of SKUs sitting in a women's department on the second floor of Macy's or something. That was pretty massive. So any leap that we made there would have been made years later as that data became, and then analytics came along. But immediately, we focused very heavily on mass merchants. And because, frankly, that was the growth at that point in time. And there is not an ever-increasing size of pie for retail consumption in terms of it, and your mass marketers were taking a bigger and bigger chunk of that pie in terms of it. And frankly, we rode that, and I think I quite successfully, and I think I developed very fine relationships with almost all of those companies. See, I'm a Minneapolis kid. I was born and raised in Minneapolis. I know the Dayton company, and then they bought Hudson's out of Detroit, so it was Dayton, Hudson, and by the way, and incidentally, the Target stores was started by my old marketing manager when I was a salesman in the early 60s, and left IBM because he didn't want to leave Minneapolis, and went to work for the Daytons, wound up as a manager of strategy, and his team thought up the idea of what they wound up calling a Target stores, and he was the first CEO of Target stores, was an ex-IBM marketing manager out of Bill Hodder. And but I see here, Dayton's was the retail name of Minneapolis. Then it became Dayton Hudson. Okay, well, that's over in Michigan or someplace. But then all of a sudden Target grows and grows and grows. And all of a sudden, there is no more Dayton's. Macy's bought Dayton's. My sister-in-law from Minneapolis was here last week, and she just about cried knowing that there's not a Dayton's anymore to go to. And which is something, because she was the president and secretary at Donaldson's, which was the other local department store. But now what's left is Target Corporation, who, and by the way, it's owned by somebody outside the United States now. But that defines that company now, and they've moved away. Now Macy's continues to expand. They buy the Daytons, they buy this and buy that, but they seem to be also making major moves in terms of online. And now again, I'm not part of that movement. I've been away from it. I presume whoever's got my job now is very, very knee-deep in online merchandising. And I know, frankly, myself, I buy a few clothes. I buy most of it out of catalog or online because I was pretty well assured of they got my size. I can go into a department store, a specialty store, God, I love that. But, you know, no XLs left. And you know, so the move, the markets keep changing. But that was a fun ride of taking what so much blood and sweat had been exercised on moving the grocery business into scanning, being able to capitalize on that and move rather quickly, relatively quickly, in general merchandise was an exciting ride.